You think you have time. That quiet assumption that tomorrow will arrive, that next year will be yours, that eventually you'll become the person you were meant to be. That single thought is the most dangerous lie you've ever believed. Because time doesn't belong to you. It never did. The world operates on a principle you've never been taught. Power moves in silence, and while you wait, it takes. While you dream, others act. While you hesitate, the game is won by those who understood something you're only beginning to see. Machiavelli knew it. Marcus Aurelius whispered it. Every empire that rose and fell learned it the hard way. Time is not your ally. It's a currency you can't earn back, a resource that bleeds out whether you notice or not. And the most terrifying part? The illusion of time is designed. It keeps you docile, comfortable, perpetually preparing for a future that never comes. It makes you believe that suffering is temporary, that growth happens slowly, that transformation can wait until you're ready. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. You are already running out. The hourglass shattered the moment you were born, and every second you spend believing otherwise is a second stolen from the life you could have lived. This isn't motivational. This is surgical. This is the unmasking of the greatest con ever pulled on the human soul. So let me ask you, what if you don't have time? What if the person you're meant to become is dying with every passing day you choose comfort over awakening? What if the illusion of time is the only thing standing between you and everything you were born to be? You were taught to wait, not explicitly. No one sat you down and said, defer your life, postpone your becoming, believe that meaning arrives later. But the lesson was taught nonetheless, through every institution, every well-meaning voice, every structure that promised you that, oh, if you follow the path, time will reward you. School taught you to wait for graduation. Work taught you to wait for promotion. Society taught you to wait for retirement. Religion taught you to wait for salvation. And beneath it all, a single poisonous assumption took root in your mind, that time is abundant, that you can afford to delay, that who you are today is merely preparation for who you'll become tomorrow. This is the architecture of illusion, and it's Machiavellian in its brilliance, because the people who control the world, the ones who move empires, who bend reality, who take what they want while others watch, they understand something fundamental. Time is the ultimate form of power, and the easiest way to control someone is to make them believe they have more of it than they do. Think about it. If you believe you have time, you become manageable. You accept conditions you shouldn't accept. You tolerate jobs that drain your soul because it's just for now. You stay in relationships that diminish you because things will get better. You silence the voice inside that screams for change because there's always next year. The illusion of time makes you safe. Not safe from danger, safe from yourself. Safe from the terrifying recognition that your life is happening right now, and that every moment spent in comfortable delusion is a moment you'll never reclaim. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote The Prince. His wisdom wasn't about cruelty for its own sake. It was about recognizing that the world operates on principles most people refuse to see. Power doesn't wait. Fortune doesn't reward hesitation. And the man who believes he can slowly, carefully, eventually position himself for greatness is the man who wakes up decades later wondering where his life went. Men are so simple, Machiavelli wrote, and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. You are being deceived, not by a person, but by a structure that benefits from your passivity, that profits from your procrastination, that thrives when you believe transformation can wait. Because here's what they don't tell you. The version of yourself you're waiting to become, It doesn't exist in some distant future. It exists now, in the choices you're not making, in the fears you're not facing, in the comfort you refuse to abandon. Jung called this the confrontation with the self, the terrifying recognition that you are not who you pretend to be, that your persona is a mask you've worn so long you've forgotten it's removable. But removing it requires something most people can't give: the acknowledgement that time is not on your side, that the persona will suffocate you if you wait, that the unlived life inside you is dying with every moment you choose safety over truth. The architecture of illusion is built on a simple foundation. Make people believe they have time, and they'll never realize they're prisoners. They'll decorate their cells. They'll rationalize their chains. They'll call their captivity wisdom and their stagnation patience. But you know better now, don't you? You know that every great figure in history, every artist, every revolutionary, every individual who broke free from the suffocating mediocrity of their age, they all had one thing in common. They stopped believing in later. They stopped waiting for permission. They stopped trusting that time would solve what only action could address. The illusion of time is the most sophisticated cage ever constructed. It has no bars. It has no locks. It simply whispers over and over. Not yet. Not now. Soon. And soon never comes. Machiavelli was not loved in his time, and he's not fully understood even now. They call him cynical, ruthless, immoral. But strip away the moral judgment and you find something else. A man who looked at the world without the comfortable filters most people require to sleep at night. He saw power not as something noble or deserved, but as something taken. He saw fortune not as a just distributor of rewards, but as a force that favors the bold and crushes the hesitant. And most importantly, he saw time as a weapon. It is better to act and repent, he wrote, than not to act and regret. Read that again. Not because it's profound in its language, but because it's devastating in its truth. The man who acts, even if he fails, even if he stumbles, retains his agency. He learns. He adapts. He remains in the game. But the man who waits, who deliberates, who endlessly prepares for the perfect moment, he doesn't fail. He simply disappears. This is the Machiavellian truth that cuts through every self-help cliché, every spiritual platitude, every comfortable philosophy that promises you can have transformation without sacrifice. The world does not reward those who wait. It rewards those who move. And it's not just about ambition. It's about existence itself. You think you're waiting for the right moment to change your life, but you're not. You're waiting for a version of yourself that's brave enough, strong enough, certain enough to act. But here's the paradox. That version of yourself only exists in the act. Courage is not a prerequisite for action. It's the result of it. You don't become brave and then change your life. You change your life, and in doing so, you become brave. Machiavelli watched princes lose their kingdoms not because they lacked resources, but because they lacked the willingness to act decisively in moments of uncertainty. He watched brilliant men fail, not because they were wrong, but because they were slow. And he understood something that still eludes most people. In the time it takes you to be sure, someone else has already won. This isn't about recklessness. It's about recognizing that the cost of inaction is always higher than you think. Every day you wait to leave the relationship that's draining you, you're not preserving stability. You're compounding your suffering. Every month you delay the creative project that haunts your soul. You're not being responsible. You're killing the part of yourself that gives your life meaning. Every year you tell yourself, next time, you're not being patient. You're practicing self-betrayal at a level so deep it becomes invisible. The Machiavellian perspective is uncomfortable because it strips away the narratives we use to justify our paralysis. It doesn't care about your reasons. It doesn't validate your fears. It simply asks, are you moving or are you dying? Because those are the only two states. There is no neutral ground. There is no pause button. You are either in active creation of your life, or you are in passive acceptance of whatever circumstances impose upon you. And time, that merciless, indifferent force, it doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't pause while you heal or prepare or find yourself. It moves. And every moment you're not moving with it, you're being left behind. Nietzsche saw this too. He who has a why to live, he wrote, can bear almost any how. But the inverse is equally true. He who waits for the perfect how will never discover his why. Purpose doesn't emerge from contemplation. It emerges from engagement, from action taken before you're ready, from commitments made before you're certain. The people who change the world don't have better circumstances than you. They don't have more time. They don't have some secret knowledge you lack. They simply have a different relationship with time itself. They treat it like the enemy it is. They understand that every moment not spent in pursuit of their vision is a moment given to entropy, to decay, to the slow dissolution of everything they could have been. This is Machiavellian wisdom at its core. Power is temporal. It exists in windows that open and close without warning. The opportunity you have today may not exist tomorrow. The person you could love might meet someone else. The career you could build might be taken by someone hungrier. The version of yourself you're protecting might ossify into something you can't recognize. You think you're being careful. You think you're being wise. But wisdom without action is just elaborate cowardice. And time, indifferent, relentless time, it doesn't care about your reasons. It only counts your losses. There's a violence in waiting, not the obvious kind, not the violence of action or confrontation or change, but a quieter, more insidious kind, the violence of erosion, the slow, imperceptible theft of everything you could have been, committed not by the world, but by your own paralysis. Jung spoke of the shadow, that part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the unlived life, the suppressed potential, the person we could be if we stopped performing the role we've accepted. And the shadow grows not through what we do, but through what we don't do. Every dream deferred feeds it. Every risk avoided strengthens it. Every moment spent in the comfortable prison of someday gives it more territory in your soul. And here's what makes it truly Machiavellian. The shadow doesn't announce itself. You don't wake up one day and realize you've wasted your life. The realization comes in fragments, in moments of unexpected grief when you see someone else living the life you abandoned, in the sudden crushing awareness that you're 40, 50, 60 years old and the person you promised yourself you'd become is a stranger you'll never meet. The poet Rilke understood this when he wrote to a young artist, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once, with beauty and courage." But he also understood the inverse, that when we don't act, those dragons remain. They don't disappear. They simply move inside us, becoming the very structure of our own self-imprisonment. What do you lose while you wait? You lose the relationship you never had the courage to pursue, not because it would have failed, but because you'll never know if it could have been extraordinary. You lose the career you never committed to, not because you weren't talented enough, but because you were too afraid to discover you might succeed and change your entire life. You lose the art you never made, the books you never wrote, the businesses you never started, the person you never became. But worse than all of that, you lose time with yourself, with the authentic you. The version beneath the masks, beneath the roles, beneath the careful persona you've constructed to navigate a world that demands your compliance. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his private journals, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." He wasn't being morbid. He was being precise. Because the greatest trick of the temporal illusion is this: we act as if death is theoretical, as if the end is always distant enough that we can afford to wait. But death isn't a future event. It's a current condition. You are dying right now. Not metaphorically, literally. Every cell in your body is moving toward its own extinction, and the clock that measures your existence has been counting down since the moment you drew your first breath. And what have you done with that time? How many years have you spent building someone else's dream while your own withers in the corner of your awareness? How many relationships have you stayed in, not out of love, but out of fear of the unknown? How many versions of yourself have you killed through passivity, through the slow suffocation of not yet, through the belief that transformation can be scheduled like a dentist appointment? The shadow of postponement is where your unlived life goes to die. And it doesn't die quickly. It dies slowly, painfully, sending up signals you've learned to ignore. The restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the vague but persistent sense that something is wrong, that you're somehow off course, that the life you're living belongs to someone else. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming who you actually are, rather than who you've been conditioned to be. But individuation requires something most people can't give: the willingness to act. Before you're ready, to step into the unknown before you've mapped every risk, to choose the terrifying authenticity of becoming over the comfortable familiarity of remaining. Because here's the secret they don't tell you: you will never be ready. There will never be a moment when all conditions align, when all fears dissolve, when the path forward is clear and certain. That moment is a fantasy, a trap, a way to ensure you never move at all. The people you admire, the ones who seem to live with such clarity, such purpose, such aliveness, they didn't wait until they were ready. They acted despite not being ready. They chose the uncertainty of growth over the certainty of stagnation. They understood that the price of transformation is always paid up front, in courage, in discomfort, in the willingness to let everything you've built collapse so something truer can emerge. And time was never going to wait for them to be comfortable with that choice. So it doesn't wait for you either. The shadow of postponement is where dreams go to become regrets. And regret, in the end, is just the soul's way of mourning the person you could have been, but still refused to become. Imagine your life as a princedom, not a metaphor, not a thought experiment, an actual territory that requires strategic governance, where every decision is a move on a board, where every day is a battle between the forces that want you to expand and the forces that want you to remain small and manageable. This is how Machiavelli would approach your existence, not with sentiment, not with hope, but with cold, clear-eyed assessment of power dynamics, resource allocation, and the ruthless recognition that your life is always under threat, not from external enemies, but from your own patterns of surrender. The question Machiavelli asked princes is the same question you must ask yourself. Are you governing your life, or is your life governing you? Because most people don't govern. They react. They respond to circumstances. They adapt to conditions imposed by others. They make decisions based on comfort, on social approval, on the path of least resistance. And in doing so, they cede all strategic power to forces that don't have their interests at heart. A prince, Machiavelli argued, must be both lion and fox, strong enough to frighten wolves, cunning enough to recognize traps. Applied to your life, this becomes a different kind of wisdom. You must be strong enough to enforce boundaries, to say no, to walk away from situations that diminish you. But you must also be strategic enough to recognize when you're deceiving yourself, when your comfortable narratives are the very traps keeping you imprisoned. The strategic self operates on several principles. First, know your actual resources. Not the resources you wish you had, not the person you'll be once you're better, but what you have right now, your time, your energy, your actual skills, your real relationships. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. He knew that princes who overestimated their power ended up conquered. You are no different. The first act of strategic living is brutal honesty about your current position. Second, understand that every choice has a cost. There is no neutral. Staying in your current situation has a cost. Leaving has a cost. The difference is that one cost compounds over time, building a prison around you, while the other cost is sharp and immediate but opens new territory. The strategic self chooses the pain that leads somewhere over the pain that leads nowhere. Third, accept that you will make enemies. Not intentionally, but the moment you start living strategically, the moment you prioritize your becoming over others' comfort, you will be seen as threatening. People who have built their identity around your smallness will resist your expansion. Machiavelli knew this. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. You are initiating a new order, the order of your own life, governed by your own values, directed toward your own vision. And everyone who benefited from the old order will feel that as loss. Fourth, act in windows of opportunity. Machiavelli spoke constantly of occasion, so the moment when fortune presents an opening. Most people miss these moments because they're not watching for them. They're too comfortable, too distracted, too convinced that better opportunities will come. But opportunities don't multiply. They disappear. The job you could have taken, the relationship you could have deepened, the risk you could have embraced. These aren't recurring events. They're singular moments in a timeline that never repeats. The strategic self is always watching, always ready, always willing to move when the moment demands it, rather than when comfort allows it. And here's where it becomes truly Machiavellian. You must be willing to do what others won't. Not immorally, not ruthlessly in the sense of harming others, but ruthlessly in the sense of refusing to negotiate with your own patterns of self-betrayal. When everyone else is waiting for permission, you act. When everyone else is seeking comfort, you choose growth. When everyone else is protecting their persona, you're willing to let it shatter so something truer can emerge. This doesn't make you a monster. It makes you free. Kierkegaard wrote about this from a different angle. The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies, and his rule begins. But there's a third option he didn't mention, the person who neither tyrannizes nor martyrs themselves, but simply governs their own life with the seriousness it deserves. You are the prince of your own existence. Your life is the territory. Time is the enemy at the gates. And every moment you spend in passive acceptance of circumstances is a moment your kingdom shrinks. The strategic self doesn't ask, "Am I ready?" It asks, "What move serves my long-term sovereignty?" It doesn't ask, "What will people think?" It asks, "What does the architecture of my life require right now?" And most importantly, it doesn't ask, "What if I fail?" It asks, "What is the cost of not trying?" Because the strategic self has done the math. It has calculated the trajectory of a life lived in hesitation versus a life lived in intentional action. And it knows that the path of comfort leads only to one destination, the slow erosion of everything you could have been, until you're too old, too tired, too defeated to remember you ever had a choice. Machiavelli would look at your life and ask one question. Are you taking what's yours, or are you waiting for someone to give it to you? The world doesn't give. It never has. It only yields to those who understand that time is the battlefield, action is the weapon, and hesitation is the enemy that never sleeps. They call it memento mori. Remember death, not as morbid fascination, not as nihilistic despair, but as the ultimate clarifying force, the one truth that strips away every comfortable delusion and leaves you standing naked before the only question that matters. What are you doing with the time you have? The Stoics practiced this daily. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man in the world, wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not to create anxiety, but to create priority. To cut through the noise of what seems important and focus on what actually is. Because when you truly internalize that your time is finite, not theoretically finite, but actually running out right now, something shifts. The petty concerns dissolve. The social performances lose their power. The fears that kept you paralyzed reveal themselves as the cowardice they always were. This is the death meditation, and it's Machiavellian in its effect. It forces you to govern your life with the urgency it deserves. Imagine you have 1 year left. Not in some distant hypothetical, but starting today. 365 days, and then nothing. No afterlife to comfort you. No reincarnation to give you another shot. Just this one chance to be who you actually are. What changes? Do you stay in the job that crushes your spirit because it's safe? Do you continue the relationship that diminishes you because you're afraid of being alone? Do you keep performing the role that earns approval but murders your soul? Or do you finally act? The death meditation reveals something most people spend their entire lives avoiding: the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, the distance between your authentic desires and the acceptable ones, the chasm between the life you're living and the life that would make waking up feel like victory instead of surrender. Jung spoke of this as the encounter with death as initiation, the psychological death that precedes transformation. You can't become who you're meant to be without letting who you've been die. And most people never make that trade. They cling to the familiar corpse of their old identity, decorating it, defending it, pretending it's still alive, all while the person they could have become watches from behind their eyes, screaming silently into a void no one hears. But here's the paradox. The death meditation doesn't lead to despair. It leads to liberation. Because when you truly accept that your time is limited, that the hourglass is already half empty, that there are no do-overs and no second chances, you stop negotiating with reality. You stop waiting for better conditions. You stop believing that someday, somehow, circumstances will align perfectly and transformation will be easy. You realize that ease is not the goal. Truth is. Dostoevsky understood this. In The Brothers Karamazov, he has Father Zosima say, "Love life more than the meaning of it." Not because meaning doesn't matter, but because you find meaning through living, through acting, through the full-bodied engagement with existence, rather than the careful, protected observation of it. The death meditation asks, if you died tomorrow, would the person who shows up at your funeral be the person you actually were, or the person you were pretending to be? And if the answer is the latter, if your eulogy would describe someone who never quite lived, who always played it safe, who died with their music still inside them, then what the hell are you waiting for? Machiavelli knew that princes who feared death governed weakly. They made compromised decisions. They sought approval over effectiveness. They chose the appearance of virtue over the hard choices that actually protected their people. And in the end, they lost everything anyway. Their kingdoms, their legacies, their very names forgotten by history. You are no different. When you live in fear of death, not conscious fear, but the deep, unexamined terror of your own finitude, you make weak decisions. You choose comfort over growth. You select the path that preserves your current identity over the path that would transform it. You become a curator of your own stagnation, carefully maintaining a life that was never truly yours. But the death meditation shatters that. It forces you to see that you are not permanent, that this body, this mind, this collection of memories and patterns and carefully constructed beliefs, it's all temporary. And the only thing that transcends that temporality is what you do with it. Not what you think about doing, not what you plan to do, what you actually do. The people you remember, the artists, the leaders, the individuals who changed something, they all shared one quality. They acted as though time could see them, as though every moment mattered, as though their life was not a dress rehearsal, but the actual performance. And they had better give everything they had, because there would be no curtain call, no second show, no chance to try again with the lessons learned. So here it is, the final question. The death meditation asks, if you knew you would die in 1 year, what would you do differently? Now the follow-up, the one that cuts deeper. Why aren't you doing that now? What fantasy are you protecting by pretending you have more time than you do? What comfortable lie are you maintaining by treating your life as though it's infinite? What version of yourself are you preserving by refusing to acknowledge that preservation is just another word for stagnation? Time doesn't care about your reasons. Death doesn't negotiate with your need for readiness. And the universe will not pause its relentless march forward just because you haven't figured out how to be brave yet. Machiavelli ended Cho, the prince, with a call to action, a recognition that all his strategic wisdom meant nothing if the prince didn't actually move, didn't actually risk, didn't actually govern with the understanding that power unused is power lost. Your life is no different. Every day you wait is a day you'll never reclaim. Every moment you spend protecting the comfortable version of yourself is a moment the authentic version suffocates a little more. Every choice to delay, to defer, to believe that transformation can wait until you're ready is a choice to ensure you'll die, with everything you could have been still locked inside. The death meditation is not meant to frighten you. It's meant to wake you up, to remind you that the illusion of time is just that, an illusion, that you don't have forever, that the person you're meant to become won't manifest through careful planning or gradual change, or someday getting around to it. That person only emerges when you finally understand. The time is now. It has always been now, and it will never be anything but now. So what are you going to do with it?